Here's Gilgeous-Alexander. McCollum staying with him. Spins, gets inside. Left-handed off the glass. Oh, what a sweet move.
Giddy, tough spot. Backdoor. What a pass. What a play. And J-Dub picks the pocket of Trae Young. He'll take it himself.
This is Lou Dort. You're listening to the Uncontested.
What is up, and welcome to the Uncontested podcast, coming to you live Sunday, October 8th, the Thunder preseason eve, folks. We are less than 24 hours away from Thunder vs. Spurs, Wemby v. Chet. I'm your host for the evening, Jacob Niffen. Joining me tonight is my FanFest buddy, Tayler Peterson.
That's right. Boomer Sooner. Also, I apologize if my dog starts barking in the background because he just started freaking out about something during the intro. So somebody's
doing a home invasion on Taylor,
trying to break in. That's kind of what it seemed like. He was like trying to get out of the door. I had this door closed behind me, and yeah. So I let him out. There's no further barking. Hopefully, no further issues.
We will. What the dog doing? Before we dive into a ton of preseason content and FanFest content tonight, Taylor, do want to take a moment, let everybody know that we are brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. You can find our podcast anywhere you download your podcasts at. Also, check us out on social media. We are on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Lots of great social media content on the way, including some stuff from FanFest tonight, which we'll talk about in a moment. Also, Taylor, this is technically the last non-game week podcast.
So which exciting.
Is incredible. So we want to take every Sunday at the top of the show and let you guys know what the schedule for us for the week looks like, so you know when to expect either a live uncontested show on YouTube. They're all live, so tune in all the time. Or to get a podcast in your feed. We'll also be posting these on socials Monday morning, but just so you are aware, today, here we go. Tomorrow, the Thunder take on the San Antonio Spurs in preseason game number 1. At the conclusion of that game, our very own Tayler Peterson will be doing a post-game podcast right here on the feed. I'm sure some of us will jump on and co-host.
Wemby.
It's going to be a blast. Some of us will jump on and podcast with him. So make sure as soon as the game wraps up tomorrow night that you tune into the YouTube channel and watch us with our live reactions. You can also find that one in the podcast feed afterwards. Then we are back with you on I lost my track here. Here we go. On Wednesday, the entire team will be here minus Justin, just for a general group podcast, big picture stuff. So it'll be fun. Thursday, the Thunder take on the Detroit Pistons, and our own Nick Crane will be post-game on that one.
That'll be a fun one. I actually think I signed up to co-host on that one. Maybe I'll give him a break because you guys are hearing my voice a lot between tonight and tomorrow, but I'm pretty sure I signed up to co-host that one. So I might be jumping on there with Nick as well.
There you go. And then after that, we are back next Sunday after the Thunder take on the Hornets. So real quick again, you got us tonight. You got us Monday after the Spurs game. You got us Wednesday. You got us Thursday after the Pistons game. And then you have us again on our typical Sunday show. We'll post all this on social media. And every Sunday show, we will let you know what the schedule looks like. So just so you can be aware and know when to find the Uncontested, because we are bringing you guys so much content during this season. It's going to be a blast. Taylor, all that's out of the way. You and I hit up FanFest tonight.
We did.
OKC Thunder FanFest.
It was awesome.
Was very, very cool. Actually, before we talk about what we've done, let's take a quick moment and tell the folks what we are doing here in a couple of weeks.
A little foreshadowing. I like it.
The second game of the season for the OKC Thunder will take place on Friday, October 27th. That is against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the Uncontested will be hosting a watch party out at Bar K in OKC, down near the Boathouse in downtown Oklahoma City. If you are not familiar with Bar K, it is a dog park and a bar and has
Get it?
a ton of really good food.
K.
Bark. No, it's a
What the
really
dog
cool
doing?
facility. We're going to play that sounder like all night long at that place. Really cool facility. You can come if you do not have a dog. You are encouraged to come if you don't have a dog. If you have a dog, entry fee is lowered to $5 per dog, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
If you come without a dog, you get in for free. Unless you got that dog in you, then you might have to pay for yourself. I don't know. There's going to be food. There's going to be special Thunder drinks. Lots of other stuff still in the works. We'll let you know as those things become known to us. But we're in the works on a lot of things for this watch party. We will be live podcasting right after the game at Bar K. So you'll hear a whole bunch of dogs in the background. It is going to be a blast. So mark your calendars. It's a Friday night, folks. Come out.
Friday night, fall weather, like right before Halloween. It's going to be awesome.
Chet versus Evan Mobley.
Oh, that's good. Yes.
Shea versus Donovan Mitchell.
Versus Garland and Mitchell. Yeah.
It's going to be a blast. So mark your calendars. October 27th. Come hang out with us.
And also, just to clarify, for those of you who don't have dogs, it's not like you're going to be a area with us and there's just dogs running crazy. That's not the case.
The bar and the dog park are separated, just
right,
so we're clear.
Right. And it's really cool.
The dogs ain't drinking.
You
can actually buy
you're not
shots,
a dog
though.
person, but yeah, you can buy a shot to take with your dog, which is amazing. I think I'll probably bring out my none other than Rumble himself.
I'm not bringing out my dogs. They are
fun.
Poorly mannered and sociopaths. They will stay home, but it's going to be a blast. Come hang out with us. Again, even if you don't have a dog, we're like going to be in the restaurant side watching the game and hanging out. If you do have your dog, you can just let your dog go and play. They have trained dog watchers, like people that go through classes. So you don't have to like worry about your dog fighting.
Your dog's literally at like
or humping
doggy daycare
or whatever. It's doggy
yeah.
daycare.
It's
and
awesome.
then if something does happen, they'll come get you. Besides that, your dog gets to go hang out. You don't have to leave it at home while you come and watch the game with us. It's going to be a blast.
It's
going to be a
We're
blast.
super excited. Like Jacob said, a lot more to come as well. We're working on some things, so stay tuned.
All right. Tonight we went to FanFest. Tayler, let's tell the folks a little bit about what we saw, what we experienced. Was a really, really cool event.
Extremely cool event. When I walked up on it, Jacob, because you and I came separate. Also, shout out to Mrs. Niffin, who showed up and was kind of our photographer, videographer. She did a great job, and it's always cool hanging out with Allie. So shout out Allie. I told her I'd give her a shout out because poor Allie had to take all the pictures and videos of us. But so we came separate, and when I pulled up and I like kind of took a video and stuff, the initial vibe I got, Jacob, was it was just like a giant Thunder tailgate.
Yeah.
Like imagine OU. And again, we talked so much about like the Thunder coming 2008, OU, OSU, football, basketball. We're all already so prominent. It was very much like a college sports state. And so to kind of like see the Thunder embrace that a bit and kind of take it to the next level, I thought was really, really cool. That was kind of my initial first vibe before we stepped in.
Definitely. And there was a ton of people there. For reference, the first 1,000 people in the door got a ticket to get like a free hat. The event started at 5:30. I got there at like 5:40, 5:45. Yep. My wife and I literally got ticket 999 and 1,000. We were the last two to get tickets for hats.
That is wild. Like you guys literally were the last two.
So within 15 minutes, already 1,000 people were out there. Taylor, there was so much cool stuff. They had a basketball court. Well, not the downtown court that was like designed and artworked, I guess. I don't even know if that's a word.
Yeah, it was
by local artists. We got to go out and shoot some baskets with little children's balls.
Poor Jacob had to watch me struggle through about like, I don't know, 13, 14 shot attempts. And then Jacob got like 4 shot attempts and they shut it down because the skills competition was about to start.
I was cooking, and they were like, "We gotta get this thing closed. We gotta get this guy out of here."
You're too good for this. It's supposed to be competitive.
They did do a skills challenge later with like 3-point shooting. They did a dunk contest, different things, which was really cool.
Very.
They had a ton of inflatables for the kids. They had little goals for the kids to play on. Tons of stuff for children. It was a great family event. Probably like 7 or 8 food trucks were out, Taylor.
Yep. It was really cool.
Face painting, making
Thunder
bracelets,
Girls were out.
Thunder Girls, a big
photo
stage.
Opportunities. And the main focal point was that big stage. They were doing dance competitions while we were there. They brought out
performances
the BMX
by
guys.
everybody. Yeah, Nitro Circus came out, did some like flips on some ramps with their bicycles. Matt Hoffman was there.
Yeah.
Oklahoma legend Matt Hoffman. Taylor, there's gonna be a video coming out. They had this one. It was like a trailer that had all game worn stuff, shoes, jerseys, etc., that you could like hold up and like see how big they were on you. You could put your hand on like the outline of like Chet or Shai's hand. Let me tell you, either those outlines were messed up or those dudes have like an extra knuckle.
I mean, it was wild.
Yeah.
So I think you and I both immediately gravitated towards Chet's handprint because we thought that was going to be the biggest, the longest hands.
Yes.
And then we went up, we did that, which is really cool. We have pictures of each of us there with Chet's handprint. We go directly up to Shai's. It was like, wait a minute. He might have longer hands than Chet. Like, this is wild.
I personally don't trust those molds. I don't think they were accurate. They also had a Thunder quiz, a 10-question Thunder quiz. We will not tell you the results.
Yeah.
We will not tell you the results, but if you want to see, you got to go to the YouTube channel. We will post that as a short. So that was pretty cool. Taylor and I did the Thunder quiz. Are you smarter than an average Thunder fan? It was pretty fun. Overall, Taylor, like you said, the vibes were awesome. It was like a huge tailgate. I was just shocked by the sheer number of people that were out.
That was the most exciting thing. I that was my thought as well, Jacob. Like you said, we talked about getting there maybe around 5:30. I think I got there about like 5:40. Like you and Allie were shortly after me. We weren't there much later than when the gates literally opened, and there were already so many people ready to get in. And that's just so exciting. I think it just shows you the excitement that this Thunder community, this OKC community has about this Thunder team this upcoming season. And I just really hope, and I think it will translate to Paycom this next season.
Agreed. Season's going to be dope, Taylor. And I think FanFest is just like a taste, like the tip of the iceberg. I love it. Great event. Shout out to the Thunder for putting it on.
And you'll
great
for
the
community. Be there tomorrow
I will
night.
be there tomorrow night. Yes.
I'm jealous. Super jealous.
So speaking of the vibes being great, they play. Like, you will be on this YouTube page 24 hours from right at this moment, Taylor, recording a post-game podcast. Our first time seeing this team play. That's going to be incredible. They take on the Spurs. Quick update. There will be no Poku with the ankle sprain. There will be no Shai due to rest.
Double boo.
There will be no Vasilije Micic.
Yeah,
due to an ankle sprain.
Triple boo.
Yes, I get the Shai one. I get the Poku one. A little upset about Micic because I think we really wanted to see him play. But
agreed.
Taylor, I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit off the tree. You can't mention Chet Wemby. Besides Chet Wemby, just like, what are you looking forward to seeing from this team? I'm not like, what are you going to Zapruder film and see, how much more physical is Josh Giddey? Like, just as a guy that loves hoops and can't wait to watch this team, what's the thing you're looking forward to the most seeing tomorrow night?
I keep coming back to something we've talked a lot about. We talked a lot about this past season, and when we were comparing it to the seasons before that. For example, 2 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago specifically. And like, again, not trying to put any specific player from 2 to 3 years ago under the bus necessarily, but last year, 1 through 15 and 1 through 16, if you want to include that additional 2-way, we were very invested in each of those players. And this year, I would say even more so than last year. Literally, 1 through, I guess 18. Is that right? With the 3 two-ways now allowed? I mean, all the way from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if we want to put him at the top, to Olivier Sarr at the bottom. Like, those are rotational pieces. I'm super excited for all of those players. I'm invested in the growth and development of all those players, how they impact this team. So what does it look like when you have 18 different players to play with, when you're Mark Daigneault and his coaching staff, and how do those players and pieces fit together? Like, that's something he's really going to be exploring. Again, this was a theme and from Media Day here last Monday. But like, how do those pieces come together? How do they experiment with those pieces? I'm really looking forward to beginning with tomorrow when you have some key pieces, like we mentioned, that will be sitting out. So that's kind of my big theme, I think.
I'm with you. Like, how does everything fit? Who plays with who?
Right.
Who goes in when? Like, I think the final preseason game will be like a dress rehearsal. The rest of these are just kind of up in the air. The only thing I feel like I can really guarantee is that Dort's going to play Thursday because that game's in Montreal.
Right.
Besides that, we don't know what they're going to do. Josh might not play Thursday. Dub might not play Sunday. Like, they're just going to rotate dudes. They're going to try out a ton of stuff. I'm just excited to see these guys get back, Taylor.
Agreed.
So many young guys. Yeah, so many young guys on this team. Young guys get better over the summer. They have a much higher like curve as far as like progression. Whenever you've been in the league 7, 8, 9 years, like, you've passed that exponential curve and you're just kind of like plateauing off, right? There's like incremental things you can get better at. But young guys, like, you make some of the biggest leaps of your career from year 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. And that's like 95% of this team. And so to see these guys come back and what have they grown in? How much better have they gotten? What does their game look like? And just to get the energy, like, I can't wait for the energy in the crowd tomorrow night to see. I mean, this team made a play-in run last year. We're 1 game away from the playoffs. Chet is back. Like, I think people are fired up, and I think we're going to have a really fun season. Just as far as like, I don't think there's going to be a ton of empty seats in Paycom like there was last year.
I agree completely. And to your point, I'm really excited to see that. Again, it's a Monday night, but it's also Chet versus Wemby. It's the first preseason game. Like, I really hope to see that excitement that we saw tonight at Thunder FanFest kind of continue over into tomorrow night for the first preseason game. Now, one other thought that I've had when I was thinking, when we got the news that Vasilije and Shai were both going to be out. And again, we knew Poku was going to be out, unfortunately. But I was almost more disappointed, Jacob, that Micic was going to be sitting out compared to Shai, just because, like, we know what Shai can do. We saw him this summer. Like, yes, please rest and put my superstar in bubble wrap and make sure he's good to go heading into the regular season. But like, with Shai out, I would have really liked to see Micic, I think, go into that starting lineup and see what he looked like with those guys. That would have been my guess for who would have started instead of Shai. Yeah. I'm kind of curious your again, that was just a thought I had earlier. I'm curious your thoughts there too.
I mean, we're going to get to it in a little bit, but he's like one of the most interesting things about this camp and about this preseason. I was really hoping to see what he looked like. Like, can he defend? Is the shot real? What's the playmaking look like? How does he play off other dudes? Like, what does the level up in competition look like for him? So many questions that we're going to have to wait. Hopefully he'll play Thursday. We'll see. But he's one of the biggest question marks going into this season. And I was hoping we would at least get a glimpse tomorrow. It is unfortunate that we will not, but I'm sure we will before preseason is out.
True. But do you agree that, like, would that have been your first pick to be the Shai substitute in that starting lineup? Because that's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I bet maybe they would have started Isaiah or Wiggins. Like, I think it's so flexible that it's hard to really choose. Like, if you told me, would it be Vasa or anybody else, I would take anybody else just because the field has more people. But it definitely could have been a possibility for sure.
Yeah, good point.
Taylor, let's take our first break of the night. On the other side, we are going to go over our 5 biggest questions for Thunder camp and preseason. We'll get to that right when we get back. Stay tuned. And we are back. Taylor, last year, we, at the start of camp, looked at our 5 biggest things or biggest questions going into Thunder training camp. I figured we would do the same this year because I think we have a lot of questions. And I think it's a fair topic to bring up. So I will bring up one of our 5 big questions or big topics. You can kick us off on each one, and then I will follow up. Does that sound fair?
Sounds like a plan. The 2-man game.
Yes. First one of our 5 big questions. Can any of the young guys force their way into a role or playing time? I think that's a really big topic for this camp. There are so many young guys. Can any of them force their way into a role and playing time during this camp?
So in typical Taylor fashion, let's start with the disclaimer. Just because obviously all these guys are young. Like I was like cracking up because honestly, I didn't really remember off the top of my head at media day or heading into media day how old Micic was. He was talking so much about like being one of the older players on this team. Like he mentioned it constantly. And I realized he was 29 and I looked up his birthday and he's like literally, I don't know, it was like 10 months older than I am. And I see like guys like Shea and Giddy and some of these like just big figures and personalities come up to that same stage. I just feel like they're like, you know, I don't know,
they're children
older than I am, or no, I honestly they seem so mature and so big, and then you realize like these guys are, I don't know, my little brother's age.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So it is some cool context.
Yeah, some clarification on this first big question. When I say young guys that can get a role or get playing time, we're referring to young guys that don't already really have that. So like Josh and Dub, like they're going to start 82 of 82 if they're healthy, right? So pushing that to the side, we're looking at guys that don't really have a role or playing time or are inconsistent, and can they get into that consistency range?
Very fair. My mind immediately goes to, with this question, to the 2 rookies coming in, right? The main one being, I shouldn't even say main one. That's unfair of me. I just mean the player who was drafted as the highest in the lottery in Cason Wallace. And what we've heard out of camp so far is a lot of excitement. He is a guy who obviously has a lot of room to grow and still needs to adjust to the NBA game, but he's somebody who competes every single play. Just fits that Thunder mold to a T that we've talked so much about. And then you had Aaron Wiggins, I believe it was either today or maybe it was Friday, talking about how how he competes defensively. And I want to say it was also him, maybe it was Kenrich, who talked about Cason performing so well on both ends of the floor. He's like, don't just sleep on the defense. He's shooting well from outside as well. And Jacob, when you and I and Nick and Justin were all in Summer League, we saw that first Summer League game in person where Cason really just caught fire from outside. And that catch and shoot ability is going to be huge playing alongside other ball handlers like Shea and Dub and Giddy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, that is the obvious one, the low-hanging fruit there. I think another one is Keontae Johnson. Like we've seen, to your point that you talked about earlier, we've seen this coaching staff not being scared to play 12, sometimes more than that, 12 players deep in a certain game. And like, I think Keontae will get his chance. We've seen him compete. We've seen some highlights of him from training camp. Like he's a super strong-nosed, aggressive player. He can stretch the floor a little bit. He has a ton of talent. Like Keontae will get some chances throughout the regular season. It's not like this lineup's just going to tighten up. So I kind of touched on the 2 rookies there. Curious, what do you think about those 2 and maybe any others that I left out?
Yeah, I think Keontae a little bit less than Cason. I also think to like Trey Mann, and I think to Usman Jang. They are really the other 2 ones that are kind of big in my mind here. Trey going into year 3, Us going into year 2. Neither of them have had a really consistent role. I think Us is more injury related. So I'm really interested to see all these guys throughout the preseason games and how they perform against like actual NBA competition, like Trey Mann has the most experience of all these guys. So you would hope he would come out. And last year in preseason, Trey played really good. So maybe he
good
does
in summer league also.
Yeah, so maybe he does that again. Does it carry over to the regular season? I don't know. Looking at Ousmane Dieng, like we've talked him up a lot. Like there's a lot of potential there. He's really big. He's like 6'10", 6'11". Like it's really impressive. Can he start to put the pieces together and be a guy that you can't keep off the floor? There's a handful of guys there that are really interesting. I think if I had to, if we're going Oos, Trey Mann, Cason Wallace, Keontae Johnson, I think my order of most likely to carve a role to least would be Oos number 1, Cason number 2, Trey number 3, Keontae number 4.
I like that.
Would you change that up a lot?
Not a lot. And not because, again, not because I actually love Trey Mann. And like if he goes to another team, I'm going to be rooting for him so hard. Like I really believe in his talent. I don't necessarily believe with his fit on this team as currently constructed. Therefore, I think Keontae fits that mold a little better. I could see Keontae getting those minutes over Trey. Again, not because I dislike Trey Mann or anything like that. I just I could see Keontae getting a little more of that burn, just how he potentially fits within the some of the things that we talked about within this team.
Totally agree. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I think question 1's a good one on which of the young guys can force a role and force playing time.
I'm glad you mentioned Deuce for sure. Like, I think that's, I love that.
He's a great one. All right. You ready to move on to question number 2?
Let's do it. Another interesting one.
Question 2 for training camp and preseason for the Thunder. How does Vasilije Micic fit into all of this, and what is his contribution? This may be, for me, like, as far as the question marks going in, like, we know who Shea is. We kind of know who Josh is. Like, we got a good idea of a lot of these guys. To me, right at the very top of the list is this question, though. Like, you brought in a 29-year-old, highly decorated EuroLeague star. How does he fit with everything else? Because everything else that you're doing is youth-based and young guys and development. There's not a lot of development left for Vasa. Like at 29 years old, you're kind of the player who you are. And you can like tweak certain things and make incremental improvements, but you kind of are who you are. And so I think it's an interesting zag to what the Thunder have been zigging for so long. How does all this fit together? What are you foreseeing here, and what do you hope to learn throughout this training camp about Vasa, Taylor?
And I even keep thinking about like a sub question there. I think it's kind of core to this central idea of like how Vasa fits within this team. And it's something that he kind of alluded to when we were at Media Day. He talked about like trying to adjust to the speed and physicality of the NBA game. So how quickly is Vasa able to adapt to the NBA game? I think will probably answer our question for us, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is like, if a player as talented as him, who obviously a multi-time MVP overseas and has all these accolades, if he's able to come in with his experience and is able to adapt very quickly, and you have Shea, who's at a superstar level, and maybe Gideon Dove taking another leap, maybe Chet's fitting really well, like Vasa should be getting those additional minutes as either a 6-man or whatever it may be, right? And that really raises the floor of this team. On the alternate side, like if he struggles adjusting to the NBA, or it takes him a little bit, the speed of the NBA, whatever it may be, then I can see it being more of like almost treating him more like a rookie, a true rookie coming into this team. And just, like I think a lot of the things that he brings to the floor fits the culture, the identity of this Thunder team.
Mm-hmm.
But again, how does he adjust to the NBA, the NBA game compared to what he's used to overseas? Maybe that's a cop-out, like answering your question with a question. But that's kind of where I'm at, right? Like how quickly does he adjust? And I think that kind of gives us our answer to how much he'll be playing early on and later on into the latter part of the regular season and into the play-in and hopefully playoffs.
If you had to make a prediction now on, hey, at the end of training camp, that Tuesday night before the start of the regular season. Let's fast forward. I think that's the 24th. So let's fast forward to Tuesday, October 24th. If I asked you that same question, or not the same question, but a version of that same question that night, and I said, Taylor, what have we learned, and how do you feel about Vasa now that training camp is over and we're heading into the season? What do you think you're going to be saying?
I would say he would be a staple in that second team rotation. And I'd love to say he's going to be the sixth man. But that's not how Mark Daigneault, this Thunder team works, to your point, Jacob. Like, first person off the bench one day could be, last year it could have been Darius Baisley, and another time it could have been Isaiah Joe. And this season will be no different. But what we do see is that those guys in that second unit are often subbed in together fairly quickly. So all of that being said, I think we see him a main staple of that second unit come that first regular season game. I think he's subbed in with I don't even know who would be the first player off the bench, but I think Vasa will be up there with him if he is not the first.
I like that. I'm interested during this camp with Vasa to learn, and kind of like what you were saying, like what translates, and not like when does the game slow down and we see everything. It might be that like he's not very good defensively and can't play a whole bunch. Or it might be that the individual defensive efforts in the NBA are a little too much for him and he can't be the super on-ball creator that he wants to be, but he ends up being more of like a secondary or tertiary guy who spots up and hits threes and attacks closeouts. Or is it the three-point shot doesn't really translate because the length of NBA defenses, but he's Josh Giddey-esque in his setting up of teammates, and they like to get him out there with, shooters and play finishers, a guy like a Chet or like an Aaron Wiggins who can cut really well, or a J-Dub who can cut really well, and they try to space the floor and let him kind of operate and let guys cut. Like, I think there's going to be some stuff that translates and some stuff that doesn't. I'm interested to start learning what does and what doesn't work. And what type of player he is going to be for this team. Not as far as minutes per game, but as far as what can he do that elevates the team. Is it the shooting? Is it the playmaking? Is it veteran leadership? Is it communication? Is it defensive awareness? Whatever. But I'm interested to see which parts are translating and which parts are not. We know it's going to be adjustment for him. He even mentioned in his preseason availability, Taylor, kind of about how there's a lot of individual talent on this team. And he's learned that the NBA is all about individual talent. And it's not as unit-based as European ball is. I think the Thunder are trying to get to that point where it's more about the team than the individual. But when you have great individual talent, you also want to let those people cook. So it's just going to be interesting to see how he adapts because there's really no precedent for it. Not a lot of 29-year-old Euro players coming over to the NBA. Either they come over like when they're Luka's age, when they're young, or they come over at the very end of their career, like Arvydas Sabonis. But there's really nothing to really compare a Euro guard at 29 finally coming over to the league.
Kind
like
of at
Vasa.
the peak of their career. Yeah. No, I think that's spot on. I agree completely.
It's a really interesting one. Big question number 3. Will we find out what the rotations and lineups will look like? And who will make the roster? So, Taylor, this one, kind of talking starters versus bench guys. We've already mentioned they play 12, 13 dudes. Some guys are going to play one night, not play the next night. But will we start to get an idea of who those top 8, 9, 10 guys are and how they're going to rotate and play? And at some point before camp, we will learn what the roster cut is and who's staying and who's going. So I wanted to retouch base on that since this is all kind of about roster and lineups. I think it's important for us to note maybe who we don't think will be back and who's going to be on their way out. So you kind of take the floor here. What are you thinking as far as rotations, lineups, and roster cut?
I mean, again, like if Mark Daigneault were on this podcast right now, or if we asked this to him in availability, like he would tell you that the rotation is going to be evolving throughout the entirety of the season, all the way to the 82nd game, right? Like that is just how this team operates, which is great, and there's a lot of benefits to that. However, I think there are maybe the core of this question is: do we see some actual patterns emerge through the preseason?
Yeah.
So I'm really curious about that starting lineup. To your point, Jacob, assuming that they play Shea and they don't rest anybody else, Vasa gets healthy and we get to see him, in that rotation. Do we see some actual patterns emerge from the preseason? That's something I'm going to be keeping an eye on. And quite frankly, I don't really have a clear answer to. I don't think even maybe Mark has a clear answer to that right now. But the patterns are what I'm going to be looking at, because we know the 13th, 14th, 15th guy, those, that's going to be interchangeable. I'm going to be looking at those patterns and who will make the roster. I mean, that's really, really hard. We obviously know the first one is going to be the first cut is going to be Victor Oladipo. And I shouldn't say cut. It could be a trade. We don't know for sure, but he obviously was not at media availability, and Presti alluded to it the week before. So Depot, if I had to take another guess,
got two more.
Honestly, Jack White acted and talked like a player who expects to be on this team moving forward, but honestly, I don't see Jack White at this current junction. And then you have either JRE or Trey Mann. I would go ahead and say JRE at this point, but I could also see where maybe a deal comes along where the Thunder are able to trade Trey Mann to a team who, where he gets a little more opportunity on ball. And I think that's equally as likely at this point as JRE being cut. But if I had to answer this question right now, which I hate doing because I just hate cutting players in general, which is why I'm not on GM, JRE, Jack White, Depot. What are you thinking?
Interesting. I mean, I think those are the odds-on favorites, right? I think one interesting little point here, one little interesting nugget that maybe goes into the decision-making process. They're loaded at guys who can handle and shoot the ball. They're loaded at guard. You got Shea, Lou, J-Dub, Cason Wallace, Shea, Lou, Dub, Cason Wallace,
Giddey, if you want to consider him a guard, right?
Josh Giddey, Vasilije Micic. Where does Trey factor into that? And if you keep Trey around, are you able to generate enough opportunities for him to flourish? Meanwhile, you look at front court guys. Bertans cannot play 5. I don't think that's really an option. You obviously have Chet. You have Jay Will. Kenny can play some 5 for you. And you have JRE. If somebody goes down, JRE is getting significant minutes as a rotational big. He's played center a lot for this team. Does that play a role? Right? Does positional scarcity versus positional surplus play a role here? I think some people would say yes. Oh, people are in the comments saying Poku as well. I can't believe I forgot Poku. My dear Serbian Poku. I love Poku. But does positional scarcity play a role in this? I kind of think no. I think the Thunder are still at the point where they're going to say we're going to keep the guy that we think is the better basketball player.
Otherwise, they would have probably drafted Derek Lively over Cason Wallace in this draft.
So, right? I think it's interesting, right? I don't really. If I had to guess, I would guess the same 3 you did. But who knows? We could get the notification tomorrow morning that they've traded somebody.
Right. And I talk about Jack White. Jack White is a player who he is not a true center per se. But we're talking about JRE playing center for this team. I could easily see Jack White playing center for this team as well. Right. So there's just again, so much versatility, so many different options. It's a great problem to have if you're the Thunder, but also makes it very, very tough.
Yeah.
And I've kind of been thinking about this too. Just a quick aside. You have a player like Trey Mann, extremely talented. And if this were 2 years ago per se, or even if this roster looked like it, maybe kind of like it did 2 years ago, and you have like maybe some OKC Blue players who've been with the OKC Blue franchise for a while. They're coming up to finish that roster and compete in training camp just for, almost a reward per se. Like Trey Mann has a lot more value to other franchise or to OKC at that point than he does when you have literally 21 players who are all very valuable and could potentially make the roster. So what I mean by that is if you're a team who would potentially trade for Trey Mann, why would I give up assets for Trey Mann if he could just be potentially cut because of how deep this Thunder team is?
Just takes one, though. I think Sam Presti understands that, but hey, I'm going to cut him, and there's going to be 10 teams that want him. So if you really want him, give me a second. We'll trade him.
It's a fair point.
I also wonder, I can't remember if we talked about this on the podcast or off the podcast a few weeks back, Taylor. But I think sometimes we forget the agent angle. Apparently, I'm going to choke and die right now. So
don't do that.
That'd make a good YouTube video. What if Trey Mann's agent comes to Presti and says, "Hey, we see all the guards, we see the backlog, we understand what you guys are trying to do. You've got to make a cut. If you find a trade for my client, we are not opposed to getting traded to a team where we can maybe get some more opportunity." Given that this is year 3 and at the end of this season he will be extension eligible, would like to go to a place where he has maybe a longer runway and more opportunity to earn his next contract. And I think, like, I'm not saying Sam Presti would drop everything and say, "Oh yes, sir, we'll do whatever you want," but I wonder if those types of conversations are taking place in the background. Maybe it's the same thing with JRE, right? Maybe it's the same thing. Jack White's agent saying, "Hey, if you guys think you're going to cut him, do it now." So we have time to find a new landing spot, a new 2-way before the rest of them get filled up.
Right.
So I wonder how much external pressure is happening for this as well.
I think that's spot on. We've seen Presti be extremely proactive in those types of negotiations. And also, like, again, you look at this team overall and you look at those agents and you kind of trace the chain there. Like, there's a lot of connections there with Sam Presti. There are some exceptions of players who have agents who, haven't had other players within this team. For the most part, Sam has very good relationships with all these guys and agencies. So I think that is a great point you mentioned.
Taylor, let's take our second break of the night, and then we'll move on to big questions number 4 and 5. Stay with us. We will be right back. And we are back. 2 more of our big 5 questions heading into training camp and preseason. We have already gone over, can any of the young guys force their way into the rotation and more playing time? We've talked about number 2, Vasilije Micic. Jeez.
There you go.
Vasa. We talked about Vasa and his fit and how he will contribute. We talked about rotations and roster cuts. Question number 4, Taylor. How have the up-and-coming stars grown and developed, and will they take that next leap or next step? I think this is a very big question for a lot of Thunder fans because this is what they are building the hope for the next 5 to 10 years of this team. These guys that are these perceived young stars that are emerging, have they taken the next step, the next progression? I'm specifically thinking Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, J-Dub on this question. We saw what they did last year. There's a lot of hype around them. This training camp in this preseason, will we start to see the glimpses that they have taken what they did last year and pushed past the boundary and gone to the next level?
Agreed. And there's a lot that goes into that as well. In terms of like J-Dub being a sophomore, teams are preparing for him specifically. They have a full season of tape. How does he respond to that? Josh Giddey as well, heading into his 3rd season. We kind of saw him, I don't want to say struggle with that, maybe kind of adjust to that early on last season and then almost kind of power through that. That's what I remember so much, Jacob, you and I specifically on this podcast, and then even all of us collectively and individually on our postgame podcast talk about Josh using that physicality And that was kind of how he finally kind of utilized his size and strength to adjust to defenses adjusting to him, right? That chess match there. And that's when we saw him be extremely effective. So what does that look like this upcoming season? And for me, I mean, it's hard not to get extremely excited. I think so there was no availability yesterday. OU Texas Day. I think that's probably not a coincidence. But Sunday, today, there were media availability for the Thunder. And I think it was Coach who mentioned this. And Kenrich mentioned it as well. But J-Dub's physicality. We've seen him bulk up. He even made the joke, I believe, during media day that like he got drug tested or whatever after posting that like
I don't think it
super
was a
swole
joke.
picture.
I think he actually got drug tested.
Sorry, no,
He was joking.
He was laughing about it, right? But it actually happened, which is amazing. But Coach mentioned today that it's not just I think he was asked about J-Dub using that physicality, that increased physicality and strength defensively. And Coach said it's not just defensively, it's the other side of the ball as well. We've seen it in transition when he's driving to the basket. But then he mentioned again, like J-Dub got the ball at the top of the key, I believe he said, in the half court. And he just like went straight through somebody's chest, the defender's chest. And Dagnall didn't say who, and then went in and finished the basket. And we kind of saw that early on with the very limited minutes we got to see when he was playing Summer League. Like he is using that physicality. He's confident. He knows nobody can stop him. That's so exciting. That's like the emergence of a superstar. How does that look like with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Josh Giddey playing alongside him? That's something I'm really struggling to answer. But all that being said, like the physicality that Dub has really worked on this offseason, that's kind of the big thing I'm looking at with Dub. And then Giddey, kind of a similar answer, I think. But again, we've talked so much about this. I won't go quite as long. Just that he's trying to get to the free throw line more. Can he finish around the rim? Can he finish through contact? And then obviously the big question that's always been there with Josh, he's been working with Chip England, but can that 3-point shot become more consistent when you're playing with an improved J-Dub and an improved Shai? So those are my like two big themes, I think, for each of those two players.
I like it. I think you're spot on with both of those. With Josh, it's a little interesting because Giddey is going into year 3, whereas J-Dub is going into year 2. So we have more of a sample of Josh and more of a, this is what he can do. This is what we're hoping he makes the jump in. With Dub, it's still kind of like a blank canvas in a sense. So I think that part is really interesting. So many things with Josh, though. He's mentioned the free throw line a lot. I think the shooting, the 3-point shot, either catch and shoot or coming off a screen. I think that's really important. Defense. Like, how does Josh defend? And do they have him guard more bigger wings or quicker guards? And where do they put him in those instances? And there's so many questions for both of these guys. I think I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head of both of them, but I think physicality is such a massive part of both of their growth. And I'm excited because both of them have mentioned it a lot. So I'm really excited because I think the physicality, Taylor, how many times did I say on this podcast last year? Physicality doesn't just mean how you play with your body. It's a mindset.
Yes.
And I talk about this a lot. Sam Presti mentioned that with Josh in his exit interview at the end of last season. Talked about Josh being physical in like a Chicago game and helped them win it.
Yeah, that specific play.
Can Josh harness that?
Right.
Can J-Dub do that? We know Chet's going to be physical. Chet, like that's in his DNA. They want these guys to be dogs.
And Jacob, we talked too a lot about, like you mentioned, talking about the physicality last season and heading into last season, but I remember you specifically kind of leading the charge. Not that like I disagreed or any of us disagreed. I think we all were with you here, but you really led the charge here about, 3 years ago now, which just seems crazy. Maybe even a little more 2 years ago as well with Shai, that next step into superstardom. He's going to have to get to the free throw line. And like, ever since we've had that conversation so many times on the podcast, that just seems like it translates so well to these other players that we're talking about, and J-Dub and Josh Giddey.
I love it. I think they're both just going to be I think they're going to be good, and I'm excited to see how they are progressing. And
really quickly though, because I did take the low hanging fruit because you asked me first. What other young guys do you think potentially could emerge into that same conversation? I'm not saying at the end of the season we're like talking about a pecking order of like Shea, Josh, Giddey, and then like Usman Jane like it suddenly jumps up into the. I mean, that could be a conversation, and that there is some potential there. But like, is there any other player that we didn't talk about there in that conversation with Dub and with Josh that maybe has a chance to, or maybe that question could be applicable to? It's kind of what I'm getting at.
No, I think it's a fair question. I think those two are in a tier of their own for sure, as far as returning guys. Like I think seeing how Isaiah Joe has progressed, I think that's like a big factor. What else can Jay Will do? I think that's a big factor. Like there are other things, but I don't think Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins or Jay Will are entering the. Are they going to get a near max, and are they potential all-star guys in the future? I don't see them entering that conversation like Josh and Dub have. But I mean, there's a lot of guys that I think it's going to be interesting. Now, at the end of the season, who do I think we might be having this conversation about 365 days from now? I think I would go Usman Jane.
I agree with that.
I think
Jane. Now, I will say, like, again, I know he's hurt. But Poku's shot has looked really good.
Poku.
In the very limited video availability we've seen of him, like that shot looks improved. He's moving very well right now. Seems like he's progressing well from that injury.
I hope we get him before.
I'm not saying he's going to be in the Dub Giddey category. I'm not saying that at all. I just mean that's another player alongside Us, who I think if he can stay healthy a year from now, we could really be talking about like a staple for this team.
Big year for Poku. We got to see if he gets that extension. Tayler, the last of the 5 big questions for training camp and preseason. It's a very simple one.
Yep.
Is Chet that guy?
Do you want to go first since I took all the low hanging, or I got to go first and kind of, got to talk about Dub and Giddey? You go first here. I think you deserve to talk about this one.
Okay. The question is Chet that guy? There's all this hype that we've seen the summer league stuff. We've seen the runs and the pickup runs. How does it translate? How does he play with all these other guys? Is Chet that guy? Yes. Pass turn. No. I really think he is, dude. Like
he was that guy, he is that guy, and he will be that guy.
Is he going to come out tomorrow and go like 20 points, 10 rebounds, 6 blocks? Like, no. All I want to see in preseason is that the game isn't too fast for him, that he's not trying to do too much, improve too much, that he's fitting in within the team. I think as long as that's the case, I think he's going to be fine. We've heard everybody hyping him up during this week at camp. I'm really bummed that he's not going to be out there with Shea. But I'm really excited to see, like, what does the defense look like when Keldon Johnson has the ball tomorrow night on the wing and it's just get the damn business given to him by Lou Dort. And he goes off 4 screens and finally sheds Lou and gets to the basket. And Chet just comes over to annihilate it. Like, what is that going to look like? Like, what does the defensive shell with Chet look like? Everything that we've heard about Chet, every time he's talked, every time people have talked about him, I think Royce Young did a wonderful piece on Chet that kind of reiterated this.
He's not scared of the smoke.
He's not scared of the smoke, but he wants to fit in with the team. He doesn't want to be the guy that comes out there and takes over everything and ISOs all the time and wants his. He wants to get his within the team structure and his end goal. He doesn't care if he gets dunked on. He doesn't care if he scores 2 points. He wants to win. I just keep coming back to it, Tayler. Like, we talked about Chet being on this team in October before he got drafted. We talked about it for a long time about how if the Thunder could build a basketball player in a lab and build a mindset in a lab, it's Chet Holmgren. I'm not worried about, is he that guy? Is it going to fit? I'm just excited to finally see the validation that we've been waiting over 365 days for it to finally come to fruition. I think it's going to fit like a glove. I think we're going to get on this podcast maybe tomorrow night, maybe Thursday night, maybe a week from tonight on Sunday.
Maybe April.
But I think we're going to come here, we're going to say, he's him. He is him. And shout out to A Smoot in the chat. Eamon, every post game last year, Eamon would always say, here's the obligatory, wait till this team has Chet comment, because we said it all the time last year. Damn it.
Almost every podcast.
We get it tomorrow night, baby. We don't got to say, wait till they have Chet, because they got him. I can't wait, Taylor. Like, I've been excited. This podcast has got me. I'm ready to run through a dadgum wall right now.
You got me ready to run through a wall. I love it.
I'm more fired up than I was during the fourth quarter of the Red River rivalry yesterday. I'm about to go chug some pre-workout and go lift some weights or something. I don't know. I got the juice now.
Some may say you have the dog in you.
They got that dog in him.
I love it. I think you nailed it. And I think that's just a really good build off of like the two additional things that I have based off what you said. One, physicality. That's the other thing I'm going to be looking for. We know Chet is physical, and we know sometimes maybe Joel Embiid does box him down. Like
who does it?
Yeah, right.
Taylor, real quick before you move, I got to steal a play out of Nick Crane's playbook. He's going to make Wemby look like a little boy out there.
Yes. That's what I love to hear. But yes, that's what I want to see. I want to see him compete, be physical. Like you mentioned earlier, you just mentioned, you described that perfectly, his mindset. I want him to have that physicality mindset, and we know he will. He already has it. Right?
You want to know what maybe my favorite play of Summer League of Chet was, Taylor?
Yes, I do.
You probably already know this. We were there for
I'm trying to like pick my brain, but I can't think of it.
We were in the stands watching it.
Yeah.
In that Dallas game, first half, because Dallas was scoring to the basket to our left. So the farther basket away from us. Chet had a chase down block, pinned it on the glass. Dallas got the rebound. Somebody put up the shot. It's in every highlight video from Summer League.
That was lively, right?
Yeah. He blocked a guard on the chase down.
Right.
So another guard or a wing got the ball and went to put up a shot. And Chet didn't even look at the rim because he was under the basket because he had just blocked it. He found Derek Lively. He lowered his shoulder and he Oklahoma drilled that son of a bitch and just bam!
Put him out of the play.
And
that is physicality. That's the definition.
Up.
The definition of what I'm mentioning there.
He don't duck the smoke.
Perfect. And the only other thing you mentioned, Chet's willingness to fit into the team, which is everything that I want. There's nothing else I would want from a player of Chet's caliber to mention within this Thunder organization. I'm not saying otherwise, but there's also a fine balance. And Chet is extremely talented offensively. And ultimately, moving forward, we're talking 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 years down the line. Like, there is going to be times where Chet needs to step up and be that guy when Shea's being quadruple teamed, right? and so many other situations that we don't even need to get into at this point in the podcast. My point being that there is a balance there with fitting into the team, but also playing to your strengths offensively. And I'm really looking forward to how Chet finds that, not just this preseason. This is a preseason prediction podcast, but also throughout his first season here with the Thunder. How does he find that balance between fitting in the system, but also being that guy when it needs to be? Because we're going to need him to be that guy at certain times if this Thunder team's ultimately going to be able to reach their ultimate ceiling.
Agreed. Talking about the physicality, he's got Wemby tomorrow night. Thursday night, he's got Jalen Duren, who he's matched up with before in March Madness.
True.
Cooked him. Sunday, he's got, what's the guy's name? Mark.
Charlotte Williams. Right.
Mark Williams. He's got Mark Williams, which is a mass of a man.
Kai Jones won't be there.
At least he doesn't got to guard Kai Jones because he might get a disease. Tayler?
Kai Jones might bring... Yeah, I'll stop.
Yeah, this is where we cut off the show. 5 big questions for OKC Thunder training camp and preseason. We got you guys covered. Don't forget, Monday night, post Thunder Spurs, Tayler will be here live with you on YouTube. I'm sure a lot of us will jump in because we'll be too dadgum fired up. We've got to get in here. So come watch, get it in your podcast feeds shortly after. Wednesday night, make plans 9 p.m. to join us right here on YouTube. Thursday, post game, as soon as the Thunder are done taking on the Pistons, Nick Crane will be live. And then a week from tonight on Sunday night, we're back at 9 p.m. as always. Can't wait to talk to you guys tomorrow night. Get fired up. It's here.
One question before we head out. No Vasa, no Shea. Jacob, I've been wanting to ask you this all podcast. Give me your starting lineup prediction for tomorrow, and I'll do the same.
Chet, Dub, Dort, Josh, Case and Wallace.
I love it. Okay, so I'm going the same 4. I think we're going big. Give me J. Will as the other starter.
Ooh, okay. I like it. A Smoot says the Dagnall Degenerates reassemble on Monday night.
We have a term for the Degenerates. I love this.
We will be here. Can't wait to see you guys tomorrow night after Thunder vs. Spurs. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be a blast. Talk to you then. Have a great Monday. Enjoy the game. We'll talk soon. Until then, as always, Thunder up.